Thank you for joining us. This is Live with Miami's Community News, and I'm Michael Miller. Special guest today is Susan Rubio Rivera, and you're the executive director and founder of M.U.J.E.R.
Yes, I am, and thank you so much for the opportunity.
All right, thank you for being here. And we know that opportunity happens all the time, so I'm really delighted that you're here and that you took this time to share with the community what you do.
Okay.
So tell us about the organization that you founded in the mid '90s.
Okay, so we created M.U.J.E.R. It stands for Women United in Justice, Education, and Reform, a long time ago, about 29 years ago, because as a survivor of childhood sexual abuse and a survivor of witnessing the horrific impact of domestic violence on my mother and the impact to my sisters and I felt that we had to break the cycle. We had to talk about issues that sometimes don't feel good or people don't want to know about because it hits home. It's too close to home. So I said, we've got to break the cycle. We've got to be able to create dialogue because we cannot continue to see how children are affected by childhood sexual abuse. So, for example, this month is National Sexual Awareness Month, and according to the CDC, 1 out of 3 girls and 1 out of 5 boys will be sexually molested by someone that they know before the age of 18. Staggering statistics, but it's true. So that's why we created M.U.J.E.R.
Okay, then tell us about your early childhood.
Okay, so I am a proud third-generation migrant farm worker, born in Michigan because my mom and dad used to harvest the cherry crop in Ludington, Michigan, but actually grew up in southern Texas. And every year we would get in a truck and we would go up the East Coast and we would pick potatoes and tomatoes. And
You personally?
I personally, yes, as a migrant
What
farm
age were
worker,
you?
I was actually from my birth all the way to at 5 years old, when we suffered the last domestic abuse on my mom. My mom decided to leave my dad at that time, but up until that point, and we continued up until the age of 16, being migrant workers. But my childhood. So why M.U.J.E.R? So sometimes people say, why did you create an organization that is dealing with these social issues that are so hard to understand, right? From an outsider's view, sometimes it's so hard to understand why, if you're being abused, you just don't leave. Just leave, right? They say just get up and go, right? And it's not that simple. So I was born to a family of my dad, Mexican American father, was very machista. Back then, women were very Mexican American women were taught to be very submissive. We were taught to be property. We belonged to somebody else. And at the age of 5, when my dad used to come home on a Sunday night, and it was the ritual, every Sunday he would come home after having taken the meager wages that they earned picking cotton and picking anything else that they could in Texas. He would come home and he would be mean and he would be drunk and he would be mean. And as soon as he walked into the house, he would already be taking off his belt, and my two sisters and I would be sitting in the corner because my mom already knew what to expect. So he
And
would
that
come
was
in.
spontaneous. It wasn't at
Well,
that moment, it wasn't something that was aggravating him. It just,
no. The first thing that he would say, because we lived, if you can see this, we lived in a tiny little house that had no windows because we were very, very poor. And my mom already had suffered violence from the day that she married that man. She had been married 7 years and she fathered, she had 6 children. So she was always pregnant. And he would come in and he would say, Mere, who's that man I saw walking, crawling out the window, right? The windows had no window panes. And my mom would already be shaking in her boots and she would say, Beto, it was nobody, I haven't even gone outside because she wasn't even given permission to go outside to the outhouse that was in the corner of her lot, right? And he would wake us up.
what year was that, more or less?
I was born in 1955, so this must have been like 1960, 61. And he would come to us to the corner and he would say, I'm going to hit your mother because she's a whore. And this is the way whores are treated. And you better not cry, right? And I remember as a kid, and now I've had the chance to go talk to my mother. My mother is still alive, thank God. And she says, I said, Mom, these are my recollections of what happened the last night that we were with Dad. And she says, yeah, it's true, and you know what? You are the only one of your sisters that never cried because he used to say, you better not cry. You better not cry. Well, that day, what was different that Friday from all the other Fridays before? Well, that Friday, my 7-year-old sister, got up and she actually disobeyed him and went to grabbed him from the legs and said, Dad, don't hit her. You're going to kill her. Dad, don't kill her. She was already on the floor. She was bloodied. She was down to her bra and her half slip, and she wouldn't even make a sound. He would kick her with his boots.
You
And
talk about
yeah,
your mother,
my mother, yeah, and she would
and you witnessed
basically,
this.
and we saw this, right? And as he hits her with the boots, she would just go and and she didn't cry out. She had already had broken nose, broken ribs. She had her hair. There was places in her head that were missing hair where he used to pull it. But that night, my sister did something that changed our lives forever, right?
And she's how old?
My sister was 7 years
At
old.
that
I was
time.
5, and I had a 3-year-old, and I had a six-month-old baby girl, right? So she went up and said, "Dad, don't hit her. You're gonna kill her. You're gonna kill her." And he just turned around, smacked her clear across the room, and I think that was a turning point in the abuse, because a lot of times in the work that we do at M.U.J.E.R, um, women will stay sometimes in abusive relationships because they say, well, I want my kids to grow up with a dad. I grew up without a dad, and I wanted them to have a dad, right? And I think that was also what my mom always thought about. But that day when that happened, my little baby sister, 6-month-old baby sister, woke up because of all the noise, and she started crying. My dad goes up to there was a mattress on the floor, goes down, and he raises his hand as if he's gonna hit her. And I think that at that moment, the Lord was there. There was divine intervention, because he just put his arm down, walked out, and walked out of the house, went into the, I guess, to the outhouse that was in the corner of the property. And my mom sprung into action, says, "Let's go, let's go, let's go." So I remember walking down, running down that alley with my heart beating at any
Let's
moment.
go mean get out of the house.
Get out of the house. Let's go, let's go, let's go, let's go. So my 3 sisters, and she took the infant in her arms, and the other, all my 2 sisters and I grabbed hands, and we started running down the alley.
Where were you running to?
We were running to my grandfather's house. My grandfather lived less than less than I can't even tell you distance, but it was just a few blocks away. They hadn't seen their daughter. My maternal grandparents had not seen their daughter like in 3 years. Everybody knew that he was very abusive, but back then nobody got involved. That was a family thing, and that was it, right? So we ran to my grandparents' house. We started living with my grandparents' house. Thank God my mom never went back to my dad, but the worst was to come. So my sisters and I, all of us, were sexually molested by my grandpa. So, at the age of 16, I ran away with my 15-year-old boyfriend, continued working in the fields, and continued being a migrant worker. And I always had that. I know that when I saw the abuse of my mom, I sat in that corner, and I know, don't ask me how I know, but I know that I said to myself, I will never, ever be my mother. I will never allow anyone to hurt me in this way. And I guess that was so strong in me that my whole life was centered around the fact that I wanted to grow up, and I wanted to grow up, and I always said to the Lord, why didn't you make me a guy? Because I wanted to be a man. I wanted to be a boy.
Just for clarity,
Uh-huh.
your father was physically abusive.
Mm-hmm.
You ran away to go to your grandfather's,
Mhm.
and there you were sexually abused.
Yes.
Your sisters also?
Yes. We were all sexually molested by my grandpa, right? But nobody said anything. Nobody said anything. Nobody talked about it. It was just, taboo subjects that were taboo. You never discussed it. There was no help. There was nobody to lend a hand. There was nobody to say, you're not alone. We're here to help, And that's why when I was 21, I was 19 years old, arrived in Homestead, Florida. I've been here for 50 years now. And I had an opportunity to really start thinking about, what do I want to do with my life? I walked into this nonprofit organization that was working on justice issues with farm workers, and I found my calling.
So at that point, had you
Mhm.
were you at Berry College yet?
Oh, no, no,
University?
no, no.
That's years later.
At the age of 19, you know what? When I was sitting, I forgot to tell you one thing. When I was sitting in that corner, I was saying, I will never be my mom. I will never be an agricultural worker. I will not get married young. I will not have children young. And at the age of 19, I found myself with no education, single mom with 2 children, a 6-month-old boy and a 2-year-old daughter, and I literally felt, Michael, that my life was over. But I walked into this wonderful organization called Organized Migrants in Community Action, and my life started. My whole mission in life
There's
started.
some little kid that's listening
Mhm.
right now because their
Uh-huh.
parents have went and got to listen to your story. So I
Mhm.
just want to go over again.
Mhm.
Young child, sisters, brothers,
Mhm.
living with you were living with your mom and your dad. He was
Uh-huh.
abusive. You ran away from him, went
Mhm.
down the street, lived with your grandfather who abused all of the kids.
Mhm. All of us.
And what occurred? When did that end? When did you leave?
I left when I was 16 years old,
Out of the house
out of
with
the house
grandfather
with
with
my
your mother.
grandfather.
What about
Yeah.
your mother? Where was she in
My
life?
mother continued because back then the culture, the Mexican culture was this, the only way that you get out of your house is if you get married. And if you're not married
And
anymore, you got to
where
come
was
back.
that?
This was in a little town in Texas called Westlaco, Texas.
So she was there with her
She stayed
with her father.
she stayed with her
Or,
father, with my tia who lived there as well because as I said, we all came back to the
and
house
so
and
how did you wind up here? Now understood.
well, I had a sister, my older sister, the 7-year-old was 15 when she eloped with a migrant worker that lived in Homestead. They met each other in Ravenna, Ohio, as migrant workers picking potatoes in the month during the month of November. So she was already here. At the age of 17, I came to a little town by Orlando, Zellwood, Florida, working still in the fields. My husband then
Bending over, picking up stuff
bending
all
over,
day
picking
long.
up stuff all day long. We were potato pickers and tomato pickers, but we never picked green tomatoes like they do here in Florida. We did we did tomatoes in Indiana for canneries, for tomato sauce and that type of thing. So I ended up here, and at the age of 19, I walked into this organization and they said, "Hey, do you know how to type?" And you're looking for a job, and I said, "Yeah, but I don't know anything. I'm a migrant worker, because back then, migrant workers were supposed to be stupid. We shouldn't have know nothing about anything. It was a very paternalistic time in our society where, 90% of us never finished high school. I had dropped out of school as well. But like I said, at 19, I felt that my life was over, but I was given this tremendous opportunity to work for this nonprofit organization. And I've been doing this type of work ever since. So,
All right. So you're 19,
mhm,
no education, a couple kids. So
mhm.
when did you say, "Gee, I'm going to go to school"?
I actually, that same couple of years, about a year that I was at that organization, somebody said to me, "Have you thought about going back and getting your high school diploma?" And I said, "No, no, I'm stupid. I don't know." They said, "No, you're not. You're smart. You can do this." Her name is Eva. I'll never forget Eva. She was, one of those people in the road, that helped you change your lives. And she says, "I bet you can do it." And she helped me do GED. I got my GED.
What was her name?
Eva Sanchez.
Pretty thankful for her.
Right. Very thankful to Eva, and for Lázaro Bornias who opened the door for me.
So we look at mentors
Mhm.
we have in our lives, and,
Right.
and that person took an interest in
She
you,
did.
and
She
and so
did.
you were on your track. You got your GED.
I got my
Right?
GED, and I have to tell you one thing. When I walked at Southgate High School, I walked with my cap and gown. That was to me the most. I cried throughout. It was like walking on this honor thing. To me, I never thought that I was going to accomplish something like a
But you
GED
had a
at
lot
high
more
school.
surprises coming your way.
I did, and great opportunities. I mean, I think that working for that organization and really putting forward and finding my passion. My passion has always been about human rights and social rights and people being treated like people just because they're people. Doesn't matter what the color of your skin is or what your status is or anything else. Especially women and especially children because of my own upbringing, right? And the fact that we have a voice, and I came, as I said, from a very machista type of environment where if my grandpa said that this studio was black, I had to agree because if I didn't agree and if I said, "No, grandpa, it's not, it's got billies in it and it's blue," he would have probably smacked me, right? Because that was being disrespectful. So I wanted to create that voice. I found my voice. People helped me find my voice. And now that's what we do at M.U.J.E.R.
So let's go through the rest of your
Okay.
So you graduated high school.
Uh-huh.
Then you said that somebody said, or you said to yourself, I should go to college someplace.
Well, I did. And Miami-Dade College back then had this bilingual, bicultural program, and they wanted school teachers, right? And I said to myself, wow, I want to go to college, right? I always wanted to, I love to study, love to read.
How did you have the audacity to
Uh-huh.
say to yourself, I could go to college?
You know what? I surprise myself every single time, because I always say, don't tell me that I can't, because I will. I always have had that attitude. Don't tell me that I can't, because I will. And you watch that I will, right? And that's what happened. So I enrolled in this bilingual, bicultural education program, not knowing at nothing at all. I actually was a full-time student, full-time mom, and had a full-time job. My first class was in Alapata, Bird Road, actually. around that
Can we
area.
put
Yeah.
up there her website and
Yeah.
the sexual
Yeah.
abuse contact information?
Yeah.
All right, so we have 5 minutes left.
Right.
So you wind up at Berry University.
It wasn't even Barry. I went through Miami-Dade
Miami-Dade.
College. I went through Miami-Dade College first. It took me 9 years to get my AA. Then I decided to go to Barry, got a scholarship to go to Barry University because of my work in the community. And then I was so fortunate that I applied for a Lou Stokes Fellowship Program in Cleveland, Ohio. My husband at that time, when I came home and I said, listen, I just got a full scholarship to go to Case Western. And he says, how the heck are you going to do that? I had just started M.U.J.E.R, and I said, well, I don't know, but I'm going to do it full time.
Hold on a second. So we're running right now. We're running across
Uh-huh.
the show there.
Okay.
Your website address
Uh-huh.
and the contact information
Okay.
for
For our sexual assault
yes.
helpline. Very
So
important.
so did you
Yes.
go on campus for that?
Yes, I did. It was an extensive weekend program. I went 36 times. I flew 36 times to Cleveland, Ohio. And, for
A
me,
little migrant girl
a
from
migrant
Homestead
little
in Texas
kid
got
in
on a plane
Texas
36
got on a
times.
plane, and even more important than that, Lou Stokes Fellowships only gave out scholarships to 5 people that had to compete on a national scale, and I got one of those scholarships, right? And I went to Cleveland, Ohio, 20 miles south of Ravenna, Ohio. That as a young migrant kid, I used to go to Ravenna to pick potatoes during the month of November when it was so cold
Wow.
that your hands hurt,
So you get
So,
your
yes,
master's from there.
I get my master's from
And
there.
and what year was that more or less?
This was I want to say this was about 20 years ago, so it's like 2006, 2007.
So you go, okay.
I was 50
Now
something
it's
years
my
old.
turn to continue giving back.
Right. And before that, I had already created M.U.J.E.R. We created M.U.J.E.R in 1994, opened the doors for service in 1997, quit my paying job. I worked at Centro Campesino for 18 years. I actually grew up from that same organization. I became the deputy director of Centro Campesino.
So people got it. You were picking in fields in different parts of the
I
country
was.
up to what age?
Up until the age of 15, because I eloped at 16.
Your father was physically abusive. Your
Mhm.
grandfather was sexually abusive.
And we never talked about it.
So some little girls out there wondering right now, can I make it?
Of course you can.
Of course you can.
Of course you can. I always say, if you can see it here, you can make it happen. Yes.
So you received a significant contribution from somebody that's pretty well known at this point. Why don't you tell us about that?
That's right. So last year, we were very fortunate to receive a couple of things happened to us last year. Last year, we received $1 million gift from Mackenzie Scott, and we will be forever grateful. And then we also received $500,000 from the Miami Foundation to purchase a building so that we could continue helping families in South Dade that suffered domestic and sexual abuse.
So you bought a building?
We bought a building on Chrome Avenue. It's called the Healing Sanctuary with Christie House as our partner. And we will convert this Healing Sanctuary into a coordinated victim assistance center that will provide services, wraparound services to victims and families, women and children that suffer domestic violence and sexual abuse starting this July. Yes.
It's a pretty big building too.
It is it's a beautiful building.
People are going to be able to go in there and be able to get some help and
They
find
will.
some leadership and some mentors
They
in there.
will.
And
They
I know
will.
you probably at this
They
point have
will.
helped hundreds of people.
We have.
Maybe a few
We
more
have.
than that. Right?
We have.
So my hat's off to you. And if
Yeah,
people want to find
thank
out
you
more
so much.
information, they can go. Just tell us the website address.
Yeah,
again.
they can visit our website at M.U.J.E.R, M.U.J.E.R, FLA.org. And if there's anyone out there that needs assistance, that has suffered sexual abuse, an acute case of rape is something that just happened, or it could be someone like me that experienced childhood sexual abuse and is now just being re-triggered in life and needs
What do you
help.
want them to do?
They can call our sexual assault helpline. The number is 305.
There we
Sorry.
go. There it is. There it is.
There it is. 305 763 2459, 24/7.
And
When
if they
you
want to
call,
speak to you, they can speak to you.
they're not going to speak to me directly, but they will speak to our on-call advocates. You
Okay.
will always get somebody on the other line. That you will never have to leave a voice message.
That's
Somebody
wonderful.
will pick up the phone before it rings 3 times.
We're going to wrap up, but we're going to invite you
Mhm.
back because you got a great story.
Great. Thank you so much.
Susan, thank you so
Thank
much.
you so much for giving me the
My
opportunity.
pleasure.
And
So-
one last thing,
Of course.
you're not alone. There's people here to help. And, when there's opportunity, you jump at the opportunity just like I did this morning. So
Okay,
thank
do
you
me
so
a favor.
much.
Look right into the blue camera
Okay.
and tell people that. Let's do
Yeah.
it straight on her.
Yeah.
Look right over there. In a second, it'll be up.
Right. So, lastly, what I want to say is that we need to recognize opportunity. I got a tremendous opportunity this morning that I wasn't expecting. So, thank you so much. And remember, you're not alone. Somebody is here to help you, and it's not your fault.
Great.
Thank
Wonderful.
you.
Let's look at the red camera over there, and I'm going to say thank you very much.